Hey guys, it's your boy. Call me by that. So today, I'm gonna be doing the Resolve Tree Explained. Ah? I don't know if I really have to explain Grasp. For 4 seconds empowered auto, gives you permanent health, does damage based off enemies' health and your health, I believe. No, it doesn't do any damage based off the enemy's health, just yours, and it heals you. Heals a little bit, not important, and the permanent health increase is kind of lackluster, but overall, I think this is pretty good as a cheese rune for early game. That being said, a lot of champs that can try and cheese early game with Grasp usually tend to do better with PTA early game anyways. And for example, I'd say Fiora is the main like Grasp cheeser, but for laning phase on tanks, almost all of them run Grasp. Next, Aftershock. I think this is the worst support rune in the game right now, to be honest. Damage isn't really important, and the resistances are nice, but they don't last long enough, I don't think, for it to be really useful. And a 20-second cooldown, I think most engaged supports are just better off running Glacial. But maybe if they have a heavy burst... Well, Glacial even gives damage reduction, so I think almost all the time Aftershock is just outclassed. And also the Inspiration Tree is usually better on engaged supports than the Resolve Tree, other than Font of Life. And then next, Guardian. I think this is the best Enchantress rune right now, as Summon Airy isn't really that good anymore. Well, it's not bad, but usually the shielding that you get from from Guardian is so much more than Summon Airy that it's just not even worth it. Unless you want to look for early kill pressure, maybe early game, or you're doing like the Zillion thing, where Zillion builds Shirelias, and then, but he doesn't have any like shields he can give you. So he builds Shirelias and Summon Airy, so he can give you a shield and then proc Shirelias off of it. So, but I think most Enchantresses would just prefer Guardian. So, yeah. Next we have Demolish. I'd say it's a fun rune, I guess, but I think that realistically, the only reason people would run Demolish is because they're running a Resolve Keystone and they're a top laner and they can't use Shield Bash and they're not going to run Fawn of Life as a top laner. Or they're like a snowball champ like Rengar, Darius, Fiora. Yeah, Fiora, once again. Yeah. So Demolish is a snowball rune. Can be used by tanks, but realistically it's only being used because tanks don't really benefit much from these other runes. So next, Font of Life. This is an engaged support rune mostly because it heals based off your health. I'd say it's actually probably best in slot for most engaged supports, especially if you're running Glacial right now, because impairing movement marks them for 4 seconds. Glacial impairs movement in an AoE, so you can just get lots of value from Font of Life and Glacial. So there's a nice synergy there. And I think Font of Life's really good as well if you have a one-hit champ like Twitch, Fogmaw, and other high attack speed characters, maybe Vayne. And then there's Shield Bash. I think this rune's awful. Don't take this rune unless you're Shen, like, I'll be honest. Maybe Riven sometimes runs it as like a cheese rune, but I think this rune's just so awful, like, just don't run it. Conditioning, my personal favorite rune on the tree. If you are comfortable in a matchup and comfortable with your champion, you can always run conditioning and just get free scaling into the mid game. Like, this rune is useful the whole game after 12 minutes. So if you're comfortable with lane phase and can just play well without the extra rune, always take this rune. Next, Second Wind. So this is kind of the main reason I made this video, to compare Second Wind and bone plating. And a lot of people I see running bone plating, but I think almost always Second Wind is better. I think bone plating is a rune that only ranged champs should be taking, honestly. It's kind of a get out of jail free card for ranged characters, because I mean, the cooldown 45 seconds, ranged characters shouldn't be getting hit very often. So this kind of makes it so when they do get hit, they can get away. And Second Wind, I mean, realistically, how much is Second Wind gonna... Second Wind's definitely gonna heal you for more than 30 to 60. So this could block 90 to 180 at max if they're just feeding into it at level 18. If they feed into it at level 1, blocking 90 damage is a lot, but in 45, and that's in 1.5 seconds. In 45 seconds, this is gonna heal you for more than 90 health. So as long as you don't just play like a moron, Second Wind is always gonna give you more value than bone plating will. So that's why I think bone plating is pretty trash. Once again, I think it's not bad on ranged characters, but Second Wind, if you're melee, I think is just almost always better. Unless you're going for early game cheese, maybe. I don't know. Darius is really like this rune, but I'm not really sure why. I think Second Wind's way better. Next, Overgrowth. I think this rune's the best rune in this whole tree, to be honest. Other than maybe Second Wind. Like, Overgrowth, same thing as conditioning. If you can get through lane phase without needing the extra, like, stuff you get from these two, which I'll talk about later, I think Overgrowth is always going to be a staple rune. This is a really good snowball rune, in my opinion. It's infinite scaling. It just gets a lot of value as the game goes on, and if you play smart in lane phase, you'll always get more out of this rune than the other two. Okay, so moving on to Revitalize. So Revitalize, gain 5% heal and shield power. Heal and shields you cast or receive are 10% stronger on targets below 40% health. So on paper, this rune sounds really good, and to me it sounded really good for a long time. But realistically, I think this rune's only good on enchanters, to be honest, or Rengar's good with it. So it's a little bit of my personal bias, because Rengar heals off health he just lost, and if he increases that by 5%, he actually, double W actually heals him on a short trade. So this rune's actually good for him, but I think that you're better off running the other two runes on this row if you're gonna run a rune on this row, unless you're an enchantress. Moving on, Unflinching. I think this rune is underutilized a lot. I think you can almost always use the extra tenacity and slow resist, which gives this an edge over just, let's say, the tenacity rune, because it gives you slow resist as well. So this is already really good for a champ like Tryndamere, but it can be utilized on a lot of bruisers. This is a bruiser rune. Tanks can somewhat use it, but I think bruisers get the most value. I mean, if they have a heavy CC comp and you're running a bruiser, let's just say you run Conqueror or Lethal Tempo, and then anything on this row, usually it's Triumph, then you can just run like Tenacity rune, and then you can run like Second Wind Unflinching or Conditioning Unflinching, and like just take really nice, like, this just makes it so you like can never be CC'd for that long in team fights. It's just really consistent and just a really useful rune. I think that more people should run Unflinching. So I guess that's really all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to talk about the resolve tree really quick. So, thanks for watching.